What's up, everybody? Welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. We are tonight going to be talking about a topic, and the title is Over It. Have you ever gotten to a place in your life where you just wanted to throw your hands up and say, I'm over it. I'm done. I quit. This is too much. This is stupid. I can't work with you. You're not worth my time. Or I am going into my room, I'm closing the door, and I'm going to hibernate for 30 years. When y'all get your stuff together, I'll be back. Anybody ever done that before? Guilty. This feeling, so here's what happens. Things happen in our life. We wait till the beginning of the year to say, I'm going to do different. I'm going to be different, which in reality is setting us up for failure, because if you really wanted to do something and you really wanted to make a difference in your life, you really wanted to be different, you really wanted to change, you would not wait until a certain date to do it. You would start today. Starting off serious. But the fact remains, when you begin to start the spinning of the plates, and you have them on the pole and you start spinning, you got one over here, and you start spinning this one. And you go over here, you start spinning this way, and you have to go back, and you wear yourself out, because then you have to go back to where you're doing this one. Then you have to go to this one. You have to go to that one. And what happens is you try to give 100% to several different things in your life instead of slowing down and just pausing for a second and breathing in and saying, you know what? I'm going to stop giving my priorities to things that are trivial, that don't really matter, that I don't really need to give my full attention to. And you start focusing on the things that really are significant. And when you do this, you begin to feel fulfilled, because you start finding your stride. You start finding your groove. You get to where you start to believe that you can actually do it, because you're not so exhausted trying to do 20 things at once. And it really helps you to get focused and become very deliberate and intentional when you do something. What I have found in ministry and businesses and all the things in my life is that if I constantly stay in a state of working, I have to do something. I have to, and I'm kind of that personality anyways. Like, I'll work in my office on a message. I'll go throw laundry in. I'll take care of the dogs. I'll come back, work on my message. I'll go, and then I do all these other things. I schedule an appointment. Then somebody wants to talk on the phone. So all these things are grabbing for my attention, self-inflicted, and I end up not really setting my priorities straight and giving time that I needed on a specific thing that really needed my immediate attention. It gets put in the shuffle with everything else. And then I get so discouraged or so exhausted, and I get fed up, and all of a sudden, I just want to throw my hands up and I'm over it. This feeling that we get, this emotionally driven exhaustion, spiritual exhaustion, it reminds me a lot of the story of Job. And the story of Job, there's a few titles, and it's his test, his first test, Job's second test. He goes through all of these. Right after his second test, Job gets a visit from people that it says friends. That is a part of the title. Even in the scripture, in Job 2, verse 11, it says, when 3 of Job's friends had heard of the tragedy. What does that mean? That means that people had to be talking about what was happening to Job. And this applies to every single one of us. When you start trying to do what God has called you to do, when you start doing work like you're supposed to do in the way that you're supposed to do it, it doesn't matter if it's good, if you're doing good, or if you're doing bad, or you're trying to catch up, or you're I don't even know what to do anymore. People are going to talk about you one way or another. There is absolutely nothing you can do, nothing in your power that you can do that will make them not talk about you. People are going to talk. And church people are really good at passing on prayer requests. We call this gossip. And so the title of this in chapter 2, verse 11, when it starts off in this little paragraph to verse 13, it says, Job's friends share his anguish. Well, when they saw him, they barely recognized him. They immediately started, back in the day when they were a little dramatic. When something was terrible, you'd rip your clothes. They had to be amazing seamstress throughout the land, or somebody had to take advantage of that and be like, yeah, I'll sew your clothes, because they knew when somebody got upset or something was so bad, they just ripped their clothes. And you have to sew it back up or buy new clothes every time. That probably got expensive. They sat on the ground. In verse 13, it says, they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word, for they saw that his suffering was too great. So it goes through, and most of you probably know the story. Job gives this big, long speech. And then after it, you have his friends that begin to pretty much blame him for where he was. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the story, Satan comes to God and says, hey, nobody in the land, blah, 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 blah. God said, have you considered my servant Job? So it was not Job's fault that he was in the place of pain. It was God's. Now, I know this sounds really mean. I know this sounds almost like the example of God being up there with what do you call it? Looking glass thing. I don't remember what it's called. And, where you used to turn it in the sun and it would make a beam and you light ants on fire. Sometimes that feels like that's where we are. And it's like, God, what are you doing? Like, why am I going through this? Why am I suffering through all of this pain? Like, can you just give me a little relief, a little bit, and take it off of me? But oftentimes through the friends that think they know exactly what's going on, 9 times out of 10, they don't. Job still, through all of that, even his own wife. Satan killed all of his family except his wife. I'm not going to dig into that. But through all of this, you have Job getting advice, hey, maybe you've done this. Maybe you've sinned against God. Maybe it's all your fault. And Job simply said, I have not done anything wrong. I have searched myself. I have honestly self-examined my heart, my mind. What have I done to lose my children? What have I done to lose all of it? In the very beginning of Job, he begins to name everything that Job had. It was setting up the story so you would understand the great loss that he was going to eventually go through. All of these things that he was blessed with, that God blessed him with, he loved God with all of his heart. He was a man who really honored God with who he was. Yet, he still was number one on the list of pain. His friends blamed him. His wife eventually said, why don't you just curse God and die? Even the person he was spending his life with, that he made all of his children with, that he had spent years creating this life with, even said, why don't you just give up and let it go and curse God and die? I have no doubt at some point in all of this struggle and issues, Job probably felt like, I'm over this. What else could I lose? I'm sick. He had boils. He would break jars jars of clay and would scrape them off of his arms. He was in such pain and such anguish. And this was all from the enemy, but sanctioned by God. That's hard to hear because we want God to be nothing but rainbows and butterflies and everything is beautiful and the sun's always shining and it's a perfect 70-degree day and there's no way God would allow that to happen to me. But yet, through these troubles, God delivered the triumph with more than what he had in the beginning. So what does that tell me? What that tells me is no matter what pain you're going through, no matter how much you feel like giving up, God has not abandoned you. God has not failed you. And he is still on your side. He may be so much so on your side that he said, have you considered my servant Stephen? Have you considered my servant? Fill in the blank with your name. Maybe God is honoring you with trouble. I know that sounds weird. Reading the New Testament, we are promised trouble. We are promised pain. There is a season for everything. It rains on the just, it rains on the unjust. So what I want you to start looking from this is that when you feel like giving up and you just, I'm over it, I'm done, I quit. There's no way that I can go on. This is the end of the road for me. I have nothing left to give. And when you feel like this, that is the beginning of God showing you that he's about to do something beyond what you can do. Now, I'm not going to say that it's going to be a month of trouble. I'm not going to say it's going to be a year. But that's for God to determine. God doesn't require some things of us. He requires everything. And so if everything that I have is his, then whatever he chooses to do with it or allow to be done to it is on him. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can say, because when God gives me something, I immediately turn around and give it to him. And this is what Job did. He examined himself. He cried out. He went through all of the emotional mountaintops and valleys and all these things of up and down, like we see David do over and over again. David had to be an emotional basket case, because he was always like this, and then he'd be like this, and always like this now. And, oh God, where are you at? Oh Lord, here you are. I see you. It's always up, down, which is what we experience all the time in our daily lives, every week, every month. There's something that happens that gets us to where we feel like, God, I don't know what to do. It may be your marriage. It may be your children. You may be like me and having a child that's turning to a teenager and you don't know what to do. But God knows, God hears, God sees, and God understands. And the one thing the Bible that sticks out to me over and over and over again, it's my mantra that I have to say over and over and over and over and over, that I cannot rest on my own understanding. That God is above, God sees, he hears, he knows, he understands. But he is always faithful. He is always on time. So we need to trust in him when we feel like we're over it, when we feel like we're done, when we feel like we cannot go on, when we feel like there's nothing left in the tank. These are the perfect conditions for God to remind you and everyone around you who he is. Love you, praying for you. This coming Sunday, if you are a member of our church, there's going to be a pastoral vote. Just want to remind you to come and be there. The state bishop is going to be coming. He's going to be delivering the word. So come, enjoy his message, and be ready to worship together. We love y'all. We're praying for y'all, and we will see y'all Sunday morning at 10:30.